Okay, hi friends. Welcome to the EDOW Roundtable. My name is Jason Evans, and I am the Young Adult Missioner for the Diocese of Washington. Today I'm joined by Rob Boulter and Jay Sidebotham. If you would, please introduce yourselves and tell us what you do. Jay, would you mind going first?
Not at all. My name is Jay Sidebotham. I've been a priest ordained since 1991 and served in a variety of parishes, including I had the joy and privilege of serving at St. Columba's Church in the mid-90s, which was a wonderful part of ministry for me and my family. Served in a number of parishes. Most recently, was rector of Church of the Holy Spirit in Lake Forest, which is a lively place on the North Shore of Chicago, and in the course of that work became aware of some research from the broader church. Really began at Willow Creek Church, which is a big old mega church up in that neck of the woods, and about spiritual vitality in congregations. We tried to apply that work to our congregation, translated for the Episcopal context. And I loved the work, and I got a lot of calls about the work, so began to travel around to do the work. So I am now, we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. I hate to tell all you snowbound people that I am 10 feet from beautiful ocean on a day, 65 degrees with blue sky, but I won't mention that. And I'm working part-time at a church here and then running around the country talking about RenewalWorks, including coming to Diocesan Convention next week, which I'm really honored to be invited to come and talk about this work.
Awesome. We're glad you're going to be here.
Thanks.
And Rob, would you introduce yourself, Rob?
You bet. I'm Rob Boulter. I'm Associate Rector for Pastoral Care and for Parish Life at St. Columba's in the Diocese of Washington. I'm very involved in convention this year with my colleague Rose Duncan. The two of us have been asked by Bishop Marianne to coordinate our worship in a convention this year, and so really glad to be able to be doing that for the second year, and looking forward to seeing Jay and everybody else as we gather at Reed Temple for a convention this year.
Great. Well, thanks to both of you for being a part of this call today. Before we get started, for those of you that are watching, if you would like to participate in the conversation, you can email questions and comments to roundtable@edow.org, or you can tweet them with the hashtag EDOW Roundtable, EDOW Roundtable. Today we are talking about the upcoming 119th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. The convention will be held January 31st through February 1st, 2014, just a few short days away. To find out more about the convention, you can visit edow.org/convention, and there you can find out about registration, workshops, and more. Now, this year convention, as you said, Rob, is not going to be held at the Washington National Cathedral, which has been the practice in previous years. In fact, it's not even held in an Episcopal church. Rather, it's going to be held at Reed Temple, which is an AME church in Glendale, which is in Prince George's County. Rob, can you tell us more about that decision to move convention to this new location and about the theme?
Well, you bet. The theme. I'll start with the theme this year. The theme is "Behold, I make all things new," and I think it's a kind of a fitting theme given the fact that we're going to be in a new location for our convention this year. We love the National Cathedral, beautiful building. We love all of its history and all that it means to the diocese. But we've been becoming aware for several years now that there are a lot of things about the facility that don't help us in convention. And so specifically, we were looking for another place that might have more places for where we could hold workshops, places to be easier to park and easier to commute to. Reed Temple, I think Ann Talty in the diocesan office or someone else in the diocesan office found the location. Well, it's just this fantastic new facility that has a great worship space which is conducive to all different styles of worship. The National Cathedral is a beautiful place specifically for traditional music because the acoustics are so wonderful. But last year we tried to use some contemporary Christian music in the cathedral and had lots of trouble with acoustics, lots of trouble with sight lines. There were a lot of different things that just didn't work so well in that wonderful space. So the Reed Temple has, a state-of-the-art, more contemporary setting, and it has all these great workshop spaces, and it has You know, it also has a built-in food facility, which, you know, for those who have been to convention at National Cathedral, we had to bring in tables and chairs and food service into the nave of the cathedral itself. So there were a lot of logistics and a lot of costs involved in doing the convention there, and so we're trying a new place, and it seems like Reed is going to be a really great fit for the needs of what we want to do during convention. And this year we're going to have, you know, all sorts of workshops on Friday and on Saturday, and that everybody, not just delegates for the convention, but everyone from the diocese is invited to come and take part.
It's fantastic. I know two of the workshops that I've been helping coordinating, I'm really excited about. There's a few people that are going to be talking about new expressions of the Episcopal Church in our diocese. We're going to be doing a workshop on more asset-based community development principles around mapping neighborhoods and stuff. So there's a lot of really great workshops. And it's really been impressive to see how many people have been signing up for those workshops. I mean, there's a lot of people coming out. So there is a lot of excitement around the convention, it seems, this year. Tell us a little bit about the worship. You've been pretty involved in putting together the worship, Rob. What should people be expecting with that?
Well, for one thing, we're going to do a big opening Friday night Eucharist beginning at 7:30, and everyone is invited to come. It's for the delegates, of course, but it's also for anyone from the diocese. We've invited Bill Roberts, who's a professor at Virginia Seminary, to lead a mass choir, and hundreds of voices are forming and rehearsing now to take part in this mass choir. In fact, Bill Roberts has written an original piece called "Behold, I Make All Things New" on the theme for the convention, and that piece will be debuted at our Friday night Eucharist on the 31st of January, so we're really excited that Bill Roberts is involved in this. You know, we have such a diversity of expressions of liturgy in our diocese, and so we're going to be able to use the full breadth of everything that we do. We're going to be using, you know, traditional music, but we'll also be doing some contemporary Christian music. We'll be doing music from the Latino communities, and all of these different groups will be represented in music and worship at the convention this year.
Fantastic. Now, Jay, you are the keynote speaker this year, and we're really glad that you're going to be joining us. Can you tell us about what you'll be talking with the diocese about at convention and what you hope people walk away with?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. The theme of renewal is certainly and making things new is certainly at the heart of what we're trying to do with this ministry of Forward Movement. It's really about, as I've launched into this work over the last 4 years and now am taking it to the wider church through Forward Movement, it's really about asking some questions of our congregation. For me, what I hope people will just engage with questions like this. It's Brian McLaren's question, which got to me about 3 or 4 years ago when I was looking at my own congregation, and he posed this question to churches of all stripe. Are we let me get it right, are we a club for the elite who pretend to have arrived, or a school for disciples who are still on the way? And we had, in my congregation, we had the club thing pretty well nailed. But this thing about what an authentic expression of discipleship in the Episcopal Church is about is the thing that's captured my imagination, and I try to share with folk. It's I know you all, I think you all read Dwight Shiley's book, People of the Way, at a gathering. That's been a book that's been really helpful to me in thinking again about how we draw people into the conversation about what it means for us as Episcopalians to live out the life of discipleship. Are we doing and being all we're called to do and be? As leaders of congregations, as lay leaders, is it about more activity? Is it about more program? What are the things that contribute to spiritual growth in the congregation, and is in fact spiritual growth the central work of the church, or is it something else? There's about 10 years of research that's gone into this work with churches of all denomination, and probably more of them because they represent American Christendom, more of them of an evangelical bent, perhaps. The learnings that come from that, the work I'm doing is trying to see what, if any, application it has to the Episcopal Church, because for two reasons. One is I think the Episcopal Church as Brian McLaren says, this is the Episcopal moment. I think it's uniquely poised with all its history and resources to move into a new kind of spiritual vitality, which again, the theme of renewing is strong. But I also think there's some urgency in the Episcopal Church. We can't necessarily just keep doing what we have always been doing and hope that that will engender spiritually vital congregations. So what I'm going to try to propose to folks is really to put some questions out there, get some discussion going, maybe get Episcopalians to talk about their own experiences of spiritual growth, which is something that we're not always so ready to do. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. I'm so honored that to be asked to come. I mean, it's like, you know, I just again, I have very fond memories of my time in the Diocese of Washington, and to be able to address the crowd and to work through some of these questions that nagged me as a rector, nagged me as a Christian, as a disciple, and I don't know, you know, that we have any you know, quick fix or glib answer, but to try to shift the conversation to talk about spiritual growth as the central work of the church. Growth in love of God and love of neighbor is how we frame it. So that's what I'll be talking about.
Fantastic. You know, I'm a person that you've referred a lot of evangelical church resources and connections that you've made, and looking to the broader church for resource and potentially answers, or maybe it was a way to put it, for some of the challenges we face as the Episcopal Church. I'm a person that comes from an evangelical background and came towards the Episcopal Church, more of a liturgical tradition, and so I see a lot of hope in what's ahead of the Episcopal Church. I know a lot of people, though, there's anxiety there for them, especially when they hear things like, you know, behold, all things new. There's maybe a sense of, are we abandoning our identity? And for me, I see us living maybe more into our. That's not as clear for them, and maybe they hear an either or as opposed to a both and. What would you say to those people that there's some anxiety around losing tradition or core identity as Episcopalians? How would you, and this is to both of you, how would you respond to that?
You want to go, Rob, or you want me to go?
Why don't you go first, Jay? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You know, what the work we're trying to do is to say, what are some of the best practices that have come from these churches, and how do we translate that to the Episcopal Church? Again, you know, I like you, Jason, came from an evangelical context, and I have to say, as a young adult, that I say this often, I think the Episcopal Church saved me in many ways. It gave me a venue for which my faith and discipleship could unfold, and I probably, had I not found the Episcopal Church, I'm not sure that I would have gone to any church. So I care about it deeply, and I think the resources are there for deep discipleship and life with God and life in the Spirit. And particularly what's interesting, one of the things we're finding in this research as we do more and more work with Episcopal churches is that the very sacramental core of our tradition is the thing that among Episcopalians moves them in spiritual development or spiritual growth, that the participation in the Eucharist, and I would say particularly an expansive invitation to the participation in the Eucharist, is a thing that is transformative for people, so that it's not ditching what we have, or, you know, but really honoring and seeing how those things help people. Again, going back to the whole relational piece and the relationship with God and neighbor is the work we're doing. So it's I'm trying to think of, there's everything old is new again or something. What's that song? What's that song? I don't know what that song is, but anyway, that keeps coming to mind. You know, it's not about reinventing. It's about taking the tradition what we have and seeing how. I mean, it's in the Bible. Generation after generation, people come back to the core, which is in many ways what we're trying to do in this work.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I'll certainly speak about that in terms of a worship perspective too, Jason, because one of the things we're talking about as we're preparing for worship together at convention this year is that our tradition is so important to us that we will maintain our tradition,
Right.
but also pay attention to what's going on in the contemporary context. I think about a lot of it in terms of what Zwiley says about in his book about speaking in the vernacular.
Right.
So we can't ignore popular culture. We can't ignore popular music. We need to be embracing that as part of our own experience of worship, but not throwing the old away. It's both. It is both and the worship that we're going to experience at convention is both and. It's what we call liturgists call blended worship. But it's so that each person that comes will have an experience of worship and an experience of the presence of God in the midst of that worship. Our sacramental traditions are so important to us that that's one thing that we would never want to give away. But we do need to pay attention to the contemporary culture so that we can reach people where they are. I've heard Jason say that hundreds of times when he does his talk about how do we reach young adults? Well, we reach them where they are. And we do the same thing through our worship. That's why I'm particularly excited about worshiping at Reed Temple. It'll be our first time there. We're going to gather with a massive procession to two very, very traditional hymns, God of Grace and God of Glory, and Holy, Holy, Holy will be our processional songs. Those are very, very traditional Anglican, hymnody. Right. But in the midst of that, we're going to be processing through a whole new worship space that we've never been in before, that we've been invited to use for this purpose. And so it'll be mixed. It'll be a mix of what's new, a new space, a new experience in that space, and what's old, wonderful hymns that we love and hold so dear to our hearts. But we'll be processing in, and we'll be taking that space, and we'll be making it our own for this time as we gather in worship. So I'm really excited about that. I mean, people will be able to relate to what we're doing in worship, even though we'll be in a different place.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're getting close to the time that we are going to be finishing this call. I just wanted to, before we wrap up, are there any other last thoughts or recommendations that either of you would like to leave people with before we end today?
Well, I'd be happy to start and just say that I'm encouraging everybody who's in the diocese who has some time on Friday the 31st or on Saturday the 1st to come and take part in convention. It's not just for the delegates and for the clergy of the parishes. We're trying to expand that so that anybody who's interested in growing in their own understanding about how we can do church together can take part in the workshops and take part in the worship parts of it. And I think we'll have an exciting convention, and I'm really looking forward to it. We also still have room if there are choirs that want to participate in the mass gathering on the Friday night. You can be in touch with me or with Rose Duncan or go through the diocesan office, and we'd be happy to involve more people. We want to try to get all the rectors of all the parishes to get a banner bearer and bring their banner so that we can process the banners of all of the parishes in the worship space. So I encourage everybody to come and participate.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. How about you, Jay? Any last words? Anything you'd like to share with folks?
Yeah, I just would encourage folks to hold the gathering in your prayers before you come and think about what the new thing is that God has for this diocese. That might be that some light might be shed on that in the gathering, and particularly, I'd encourage folks to think about how they understand this phrase spiritual growth, what that means to them, where they've experienced when spiritual growth has stalled, when they've battled inertia in their own communities and their own life, just to get that sort of in their mind kicking around and thinking about what are the things in their own journeys that have helped them move forward, because that's kind of what I'll be talking about. So I don't know that, I don't know how I'm going to do 2 workshops. Joey and I are going to do 2 different workshops, and there may be more time in that for back and forth, but I certainly hope that there'll be some time for exchange around these questions, because I think they're critical to the Episcopal Church moving forward, and I'm so grateful to the Bishop and the whole crowd for letting me come and talk for a while. So, yeah, it's a gift.
Well, we're glad that you'll be here, Rob. Yeah. Thanks to you and your team for all the work you've put into making convention what it will be. And I agree with Jay that sometimes some of the best things that happen at these kinds of events are the hall around and hoping to have conversations with folks. So please pull folks aside, ask people to sit down over a cup of coffee, go deeper, share your story, hear other people's stories, see what you can learn from others and what you can teach other people at the convention. It's but one thing I am excited about, and before we take off, I do want to let people know, if you're a young adult, and we use that term liberally, so if you feel like you want to call yourself a young adult, you are. But if you are a young adult, we are going to be kind of having an after party of sorts, or after Eucharist party in Prince George's County nearby Reed Temple. So be watching out for information about that coming out. We're kind of loosely calling it the 2014 Diocesan Intervention. So if you're a young person and you would like to hear what's going on around the diocese with other young people, meet other young people, find out what's going on in some of the parishes, some of the things I often hear is, oh, there aren't young people in our church. Well, quite frankly, in this diocese there are young people, and some of them are doing some fantastic, creative, exciting things. So pull those people aside. The next few days, and you'll find all that information online too. So don't forget, you can find out more about the 119th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington at edow.org/convention. Thanks to each of you for participating in this, and then
privilege.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome.
Glad to do it.
The snow doesn't stop everybody from having a good rest of their day, and there's not too many power outages out there. So please join us again next month for the February Roundtable. We'll be talking about something we haven't really quite figured out quite yet what that's going to be, but it'll be on February 18th at 1 o'clock p.m. And you can watch on youtube.com/EDOW videos. And if you'd like to get in touch with any of us on the diocesan team, you can find out how by going to edow.org/contacts, and all of our information is there. Thanks again for joining the conversation. We'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.